Haha. Already clicked all the buttons. Welcome to the Geek on My Sleeve channel. Today we're doing a deep dive dissection into the Golden Compass. And we have several new faces, or I guess one new face, one returning face.
Hi, faces.
Hey,
Hello.
Glad to have Ben from Ben's Blur back. And
hey,
I want to shout out real quick his read along for Brandon Sanderson 2021. Looking forward to that. I'll try to snag the Discord invite from him and include that in the description below if you guys want to join up on
okay.
that. Always looking for an excuse to read more Brandon Sanderson. And then, first time live with us, we have Karen, who has been a big book influence for both Peter and myself and actually introduced us to the Golden Compass. We were debating it before we went live. I think we were trying to figure out it was like 15, 20 years ago, something like that.
Yeah,
We
longer
had
than we want to admit, right?
exactly. And for me, I really feel that it was the first fantasy book for me that I would consider more along the lines of like adult fantasy that I kind of got into. Um, and I know Karen was quoting Philip Pullman about not wanting to have hit like into a marketing genre per se. But I know other people always debate like, is it YA? Is it adult? Um, be kind of curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that. I don't know where I fall. I definitely don't think it's YA, but I agree with what he says that um, young adult can read it per se. Um, but yeah. Curious to your guys' thoughts. Whoever wants to jump in, ready, set, go.
Alright, so I could see it both ways. Um, kind of like the story structure and how it builds up and how it literally, you know, guides you and holds your hand through the whole process. I felt like YA, and then some of the viewpoints of the main character and how oh, she's able to get away with a couple things that I felt were silly, like when she lies sometimes, literally, if you just went and asked anybody else or what happened, it wouldn't add up and she'd be outed. But in regards to some of the concepts, like the other half of your soul being a demon and being able to shapeshift, and just, yeah. Some of the concepts are pretty intense where I could see it being adult, but at the same time, what is 13 to 17 kind of young adult, so I could see it as well. You got to think about all those angsty teenagers.
Them angsty teenagers.
But is she actually an angsty teenager? I mean, she's only like 11 or 12. She's a tween, right? When
That's
she starts
true.
out this book. So
That's
I
true.
think I think there's a lot of adult themes in here. There's a lot of adult references I think you wouldn't get as a kid.
Mm.
Some of the things that they're talking about, with the circles of hell and just different some of the religious things. And I admit I've read all three of the books and more of the series before and after it, so I have a hard time separating out and only sticking to the one book. So I apologize for that in advance. If but I think there's a lot of themes here that are definitely can appeal to adults.
I would agree with that. And I was trying to think about it when I first read it, which I was definitely a young adult compared to now. And there definitely are some themes that probably would have been harder to track, but I don't know that I really missed out on much of the story per se. It just adds that extra layer. Um,
Yeah, it's like Dakota Kraut's Easter eggs. You don't need them, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I'm trying to remember. Um, Ben, did you do like specific content on it? Or I remember watching one of your videos where you talked about the dark materials and just like some of the backstory behind it, or his dark
Um,
materials.
I
Um,
suppose I suppose to answer like the whole YA thing as well.
sure.
I've read all three books between September and now because they brought on the BBC the series for season two, so I had to read The Subtle Knife, and then I went straight into the third one, The Amber Spyglass.
Mm,
And in terms of the first book being, because we're just talking about the first one, obviously, in terms of it being like YA or adult, I think as you guys have said and as Karen said, there's some adult elements there that you wouldn't necessarily understand if you were like a young teenager or a young adult. And I think that the reason it's classified as YA is because it's got a very cute appeal to it. You've got Pan is this small shape shifting like ferret, and he changes cute animals. And you've got like Lyra's like a young girl, and she's protected by the scholars. And then you've got this big polar bear, and it sounds very magical. But the
Hmm.
deeper you read into the books, I don't know if you've read all three, you guys, but the more you read into them, the more adult and serious they get. And there's
Yeah.
a huge hidden meaning behind the whole books that
Hmm.
is very, I would say, controversial. But obviously, that's the author's opinion on everything. And yeah, I
well,
think young adult it can be, but I would say it depends how you look at it, whether you think it is adult or not adult. Yeah,
I have read all three, listened to multiple
yeah,
times, but do our best to keep spoilers from The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass out until we get to that one. I do want to watch season 2 of the HBO series, and I know Peter, in prep for this, recently watched the movie and started the HBO series.
yeah.
So if we want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit, we can. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of the HBO series so far.
I think they've done a good job on it, pulling it together as his dark materials, and they've integrated the books pretty good so far, and I like it. I'm waiting for season 2 to be done at the end of December, so I can then go and get HBO for a month, and then I will binge watch.
Yes, yes, yes. They seem to be doing a pretty good job as far as adaptations go, and they also have a lot of awesome actors in there, including
yeah,
um, oh, was it like Xavier or whatnot from the X-Men is her dad. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. He's in it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess that was probably one of the more adult themes I felt because you're an orphan and now your dad is trying to bridge to other worlds and your mom ends up kidnapping you and is cutting the souls out of little children.
is it really kidnapping though? If that's your mom, I mean, I don't know. Anyway,
Mm.
um, yeah, just such an interesting book. Where do you guys want to start with it? Because there's just so much to talk about with the book that it's always hard to get to do these books justice and the hour and a half. Um, but yeah, verdict is yes, it's still kidnapping, even if your mother does it. So yeah,
All
yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
I think first direction was asking movie versus HBO series thoughts. First one, then.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a long time since I've seen the movie, and from what I remember of the movie is I did not appreciate it as an adaptation. Um, I know Peter we were talking a little bit beforehand on your overall thoughts, but I definitely felt HBO, which I don't know, TV series you get a lot more screen time, right?
Mhm.
I'm trying to think how many episodes there were of the HBO, first season. You get like 8 9 hours, and that's almost one for one on the book, which is relatively short compared to the movie a couple hours long.
Or that's equivalent in our time. I think it's like 20 hours
Oh, is it 20 hours? Fair
for the
enough.
book, and then 8 episodes in season one.
Okay. Um, Ben, did you see the movie and the HBO series?
Yeah, yes. So the HBO series is produced. It's on. It was on tonight about 2 hours ago. It's on the BBC. It's completely free
Okay.
in England. Like we just get it for free on a Sunday night at 8:10. I
Oh my
haven't watched
goodness.
tonight's one, and
How
obviously
nice.
that's yeah, and that's there's some perks to being over here. So that's obviously
Uh,
season 2, but season 1 I watched, and I remember watching it. Laura and I watched it at her parents' house every Sunday. We go around for a Sunday dinner, which is like a very British like tradition, and
okay.
we'd watch that with them, and it's really good. And I think they've done a really good job. I think they've got £1 million budget, so it's about $1,500 per episode, $1.5 million an episode. They brought
Oh
in like
wow.
James McAvoy, and they brought in like that Rita woman who plays Mrs. Coulter, and I think they've done a phenomenal job on doing it. But I do think they burnt through the season. I think probably the first 5 or 6 episodes of book 1, and then the last couple of episodes are more book 2. It sort of leads into. So I think there's a
Okay.
bit of a crossover, between the two. But yeah, I think the TV show is amazing. They've done a really good job with it. I'm not sure what they've changed in the first season compared to the book, because I know they're probably going to change some stuff to make it fit.
You
And
have
I'd probably
to.
say it's probably quite honest. They probably made it as honest as possible. It compares to the book as true as possible. I would say as the books and the seasons get on, I think you'll notice more differences. It becomes more convoluted, but I think the series is really good, and I think the film was really good. I don't think it did very well in 2007 when it came out, because it wouldn't have. They didn't make a second one, so I don't know what the box office sales were for it. But yeah, it was really good. Like I liked the film. I thought it was kind of cool. I thought the actors were all right. The polar bear was cool, like Lorik, and I think it was just different. I mean, they had £180 million budget in dollars for the film, and then you've got 8 episodes, 16 episodes for the first 2 seasons. So they've only spent like $1,600, like 1.6 million, $16 million, sorry, so far for 2 seasons, maybe $20 million for 2 seasons. So it's a lot less, and they're probably getting a lot more bang for their buck, so to speak.
Righto. Righto.
So
Um, I have to laugh every time I hear about the giant polar bears, because when I was talking to Peter about getting ready for our TBR for this month, and I mentioned like his Dark Materials, what finally made it click for him was like, oh, is that the armored polar bears or whatever? It's like, yes, that is, out of everything epic that happens in this series, giant armored polar bears.
yeah, it's a massive appeal, like, isn't it? It's such a unique thing to have, and it's really cool. And I think that's probably where I get most of its fantasy from, isn't it? It's like you got this giant polar bear with armor on. It's kind of like a
Yeah,
focal point. Yeah.
yeah, and their armor is their soul and everything. Um,
So,
Peter,
Peter, was there enough battles in this for you? That's what I wanted to know.
uh,
So the beginning of the book was just traveling, but it was interesting enough the way they kind of drew along the story, because like literally you see the whole book or the whole plot at the very beginning when she's in the wardrobe and sees the master try to poison her uncle slash father, and he
hmm,
lays it out where he's like, hey, here's the northern lights, and here's the city in the sky, and here's the dust coming down. And so it literally lays it all out at the beginning, and then it's all just traveling and learning little bits more throughout the story. um, there was a bit of combat. I wouldn't say enough.
never enough.
But side note, back to the movie and the series. I didn't actually get too far in the series. I've only seen first episode. But if you take both the movie, the book, and the series with the book interpretation, in the book they say, or they explain it after the Adam and Eve bit, about the coin flip and the probabilities in each of these parallel universes. The coin gets flipped, and when it comes down heads, now the probability of it coming down tails collapses, but then that either splits the universe and creates a new parallel universe, or it, continues with it. So that's kind of how I took the movie. Like, I felt like the movie was a little disjointed because like the book really plays it all out and you get to see all the connections and get it explained from several different people's point of view. And then the movie, it just seemed like it was moving a little quick and they flipped a couple things, though how our main armored bear did keep some of his good lines in there. Like when they see the witches pass over and she asks, "Are you afraid?" And he says, "No, but if I was, I'd master my fear."
Fear is the mind killer. Oh wait, wrong book. Um, yeah. So, favorite character from the book, guys? Ben got it started.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. I like Lorik a lot, the armored bear. But yeah, how about you guys? You have favorites?
I like Scoresby. Lee Scoresby. He's fun.
Oh
Which
yeah,
one is
yeah, the pilot, right?
Aeronaut.
Yes, the
Yeah.
aeronaut, the
Aeronaut.
Texan.
Oh, that was gonna
Sort
be
of like
mine.
a cowboy.
Yeah, his conversation with Serafina Piccolo is pretty good when they're in the balloon, the whole back and forth about like their perspective and choice
Hmm.
and his, wanting a choice on whether or not he's drafted for this war or not. And Serafina Piccolo is like, hey, we're all part of it, whether you want to be or not. And then yeah, don't want to get too far ahead, but we're all on Laura's side, right? Lyra's.
Lyra.
Lyra's. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Mrs. Coulter as a character.
Okay.
She's, I wouldn't say she's, I mean, in a way she's an antagonist, but she's not directly the antagonist, if you like. But I just think that without her, it would be like, if I'm trying to compare, it's like with Game of Thrones, like A Song of Ice and Fire has a lot of characters, and there's characters that you love to hate, like Joffrey. And Mrs. Coulter's one of those kind of characters, I think, that like especially her little monkey. You see that little monkey, and you're like, there's that little shit. Like he's coming along with his little beady eyes, and he's just causing problems. But it's without that, you wouldn't have that fear factor, especially in the series, the TV show. Because in the TV show, there's parts where like she's a big part of like that episode, and it's really huge to watch because you're like, what's she going to do next? And the actress really brings it to life. And so I think it's a really good enough. So you find out her connection and how she is related or involved in the story with Lyra. I think that's where it becomes really like, it has a bigger impact then, that like she's of this status with Lyra and yet she's doing this stuff to the children. And yeah, I think it's really, really cool because they could have just written her off and said like that she died and she wasn't part of her life, but really she is there and she's just doing something different. Yeah.
And does she get a redemption like King Killer?
We can't go into that, Peter.
Oh.
Yeah, I was about to say no spoilers.
We can't
no
talk
spoilers.
about that. But I think one thing comparison of the movie in the series with Mrs. Coulter's monkey, to me the one in the book, it is so scary, it is creepy, and it's violent. And the one in the TV series right now it seems more it's like afraid of her than being outright evil and nasty in itself. So I think there's something between the characters and the Mrs. Coulter and her demon in the TV series that is definitely different than what you see in the book, I think.
Well,
Okay.
and that, I guess, was why I felt it was a parallel universe, because I remember a scene where she smacks her monkey, and in the book sense, like, she would have directly felt that, and it would be like, why you're hitting yourself kind of moment. But then in the series, it's like, get back in line. Oh.
Karen, you've read the books as well, and you've multiple times. Do you think that obviously later in the books, because I've read them very recently, like I remember there's certain parts where the monkey is doing some really vile stuff to other creatures. you think they'll
Right.
put those in the show, or do you think they'll take them out because it's too, like, it's not a family sort of show? Because over here it's on 8 o'clock in the evening on a Sunday, so it's quite a family aimed show.
I hope they put it in. I hope they put it in because to me right now it seems like she's really they're showing like she's trying to fight herself. If the monkey is her soul basically, and she's treating the monkey badly like she is in the series. It's like she doesn't like herself and she doesn't like who she is. But I think we saw a little bit of the violence to other creatures like Pantalaimon when in the series, but not as much as is in the book. So I hope they do, but you can tone it down and you can make it not so horrible as the book, but it's a really frightening creature to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, like, how do you change the skin? Because, like, everybody else seems like their animals or spirit animals are direct animals, but I've never seen a golden monkey, unless I'm mistaken.
There's all sorts of
Anyway, well,
monkeys out there.
fancy.
But yeah. On that note, have you guys thought about what your demon might be in that parallel world? I was trying to think about what mine would be going into as I was getting ready for the stream. And I don't know if I would be able to accurately reflect it. Because I remember in the first one, I think it was when she was on the boat and everything, talking about how she didn't want her demon to ever stop changing. And, I forget who she was talking to. I think one of the boatmen. It's like talking about how it's a reflection of themselves and everybody wants to have like a lion or, like something big and epic. And then they end up with, like a poodle or something like that. And I have to bite my lip because I almost slipped up and talked spoiler of later in the book. But yeah, anybody have any speculation on what their demon might be?
Like us specifically?
Yeah. What your demons might be.
I'll take a penguin. I'll take a hawk, a turtle. I'll take a dolphin, a whale.
Well, it's supposed to be a
monkey,
reflection of yourself. So you're saying you're like a penguin, Ben?
I'm just picking all the animals I love. I just love a panda.
Oh, yeah.
A wolf, an owl. I'll take an owl. I think and I think I'm very aware when I'm driving and when I'm around. I'm very aware of everything. So I would say, I'd say a barn owl, something big.
Barn owl.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, I'd like that. I thought it was what you want to be. I was just naming all the creatures. Just pick.
I was about to say, like, I could think of half a dozen that would be awesome, but then like when I think about like your spirit animal or whatever,
or how it correlates.
Yeah. Maybe Pete. It's a bit of brotherly love. A squirrel. Ooh, shiny. Ooh, take this apart.
I don't really know what.
I was trying to think.
That seems feasible. Because everybody else is like mid-size, large size, but there's another book where they have the creeping death squirrel. Granted, it's magical in nature, but yeah, essentially changes people's anatomy or whatever into the acorns or whatever that it eats.
Yeah.
As it eats them alive.
Yeah. Karen, you have any ideas?
I really don't. I sat here and thought about that beforehand and was like, what would I relate to? And I just don't know.
Yeah. I think about like some different characteristics I have. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe that's more like this, maybe that's like that. Maybe like a Siamese cat or something like that. For mine, and then I think about other characteristics. It's like, I don't know, maybe I have my ooh shiny moments. Maybe I'd be the one that's a squirrel, or a lizard. We'll come back to it.
Do you think that the people we've seen in the book, their demons match who they are, that they fit with their personality, their spirit?
That is a good question. I'm trying to go through and remember
Who has what?
who has what. Yeah, her parents are so easy to remember.
Or armored bear having armor.
That's cheating.
What does Lee
well,
Scoresby? Doesn't he have a bird?
Lee Scoresby has a snowshoe rabbit, doesn't he?
Oh
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
That's for the rabbit. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure how that correlates with him.
That Wild
Yeah.
West vibe. He's real quick on the draw.
That's true.
Yeah,
Always
And
observant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then he gets
Witches
into
have
some
seagulls.
situations, but at the same time he's pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all the witches had birds because they all flew.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
But not everybody who had a bird was a witch, because there was a couple of gypsies that had birds, right?
right.
Yeah.
And then
all those scalping hole in the head guys who were guarding the
yeah, they all had wolves, right?
yeah.
So that kind of lines up, because they were very like militaristic, pack-like in a way, and aggressive. So I could see that.
All your
And-
servants had dogs of
Right.
one variety or another.
Loyal to some degree. I wonder
And
how
then
that
with the
works.
magic-
Like if like on your resume you have to put like, yes, I have a dog as a servant, or if they just like naturally fall into those roles.
Well, that was another like weird cultural shock difference, because her best friend or whatever, who is the servant Roger, and so is it a caste system because he is an orphan and he is forced to be a servant, or because she's also an orphan but she's a top tier orphan, or however you say it.
Yeah.
Rich versus
Yeah, she's
poor.
rich,
I think
yeah.
it all comes down to that.
Yeah, she had her
Okay,
uncle.
had money versus needing to
Yeah.
provide. Okay.
And then he had the uncle had the snow leopard, or the father had the snow leopard.
Yeah.
Very proud in a way. Miss Coulter the monkey. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're kind of similar,
Or
but
you
maybe not
could
direct
make a
correlation.
connection.
Yeah.
It's possibilities. It's one of those like subject to interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I'm thinking of some other examples, but they come along later in the series, don't they?
I was just going to say about Lord Boreal, but I don't know where he comes. I think he comes in the second book. That
You see
Father
him-
Coram.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
Yeah.
I was going to say one of them had a snake, didn't he? The
Lord Boreal has a snake.
Lord Boreal
Yeah.
snake.
Okay.
He's very sneaky, isn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
And when you read the other books, you'd realise like how he is quite devious. John Farr, the Egyptian king, did he have a? I think
Did he
it was
have, like,
just
a
described him
hawk?
as like a. No, I think he had a large cat. Sophonax,
Oh,
the name. I
okay.
think it's like a play on the word Sphinx.
Mm,
The way she looked. And then there was one who had, I think it was like a little lizard. He was one of the people in the magisterium, not the cardinal, but the guy who sort of takes over later on as the cardinal. He has like a little lizard on his sort of shoulder.
See, there's sort of like a chameleon that changes his spots, or he changes his attitudes to whatever he's trying to influence, maybe.
yeah.
It could be, I suppose. I think Mrs. Coulter sort of influences him a lot with her like deviousness. So it might, I don't know if the lizard's like, I don't know. I suppose it's very small, maybe easy to squish, or it's looking out for bigger predators, maybe because he's not very confident, and she sort of influences him a lot. So it's interesting. It must be fun to design them as a writer, thinking I want to have these animals in, and that kind of stuff.
I think so.
So
Yeah.
I've had to do something similar with the book I'm writing, because just very 10 seconds off topic, not a plug or anything.
No,
But
you're
like I've had a bit of characters bond with like a creature of their choosing. And so like I've had to put like a hippo in one or a monkey, and it's trying to find creatures they can use and what's suitable for the area of the world they live in and stuff. But it is really cool to do, and you want to sort of give everyone because you like animals. They're obviously really cool creatures to put in.
No, yeah, you gotta catch them all.
Right. Man, imagine getting like a hippo or something as your demon. How challenging that would be. You couldn't live in like normal city life. Walking around with a hippo or an elephant following you.
Amazing, a big elephant.
Yeah, right.
I'd say that'd be Leo's.
Yeah, right. But then the whole like taboo that you can't touch another person's demon. Like if you have a car-sized demon, you
Yeah,
almost
that's a
have
good
to go
point.
out and live in the wild. Yeah.
Didn't they have one guy who they told the story of the guy who his demon became a dolphin or something, and then he couldn't get out. He had to always be by the water. He couldn't,
Yes.
go on land because his demon couldn't survive out of water. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't go
That's
far away,
crazy.
can you? Unless you're a witch, you do that thing the witches did when they're young.
Mhm.
right.
Or well,
I don't know if that's a spoiler or not.
Or it's not in one. I've only read book one, but I was very curious how they were able to go further. So I guess it's
You find out later, but it's not like you don't see anybody do it. It's just spoken about, and you sort of realize. But yeah, I want to say, but I don't want to say. So I think
Right.
there's
Pete
bits in the
can keep
first
us
one, isn't there?
honest.
Like obviously
Yeah.
like Mrs. Coulter and stuff. So it's trying to work out what's going on.
Yeah.
It's good.
All good. Yeah, the author I feel does like a really good job with the story progression, and like as far as like fantasy books go, I know like we have the parallel universes, yet it's so much like our own world, right? In the beginning, except for we have demons. So like I remember like it was a great intro to fantasy for me because like, you know, first couple chapters, that's really the only real difference that we know aside from like the expedition. And then as it progresses, it starts adding those extra fantasy layers, right? Like then we get there's talking polar bears, and then we get the witches, and don't want to jump too far ahead, but like as you start exploring those other realms, you get those extra layer of fantasy, which is always kind of a challenge getting over that learning curve on a new story, right? Like just like how different the world is. And then like the end of the book, just so we can make sure we don't go too far ahead, is when the father crosses over, right? Goes to
or the father kills. Starts with an
Roger.
R.
Roger.
Roger.
Father
Poor
kills
Roger.
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 Mom and dad end up having their scuffle, not scuffle. And then there's a point where what's our main character's name?
Lyra?
Linda?
Lyra.
Where Lyra and Pan are essentially saying, well, all these people who we've been listening to because they're adults believe that dust is bad. What if dust is actually good? So we've got to go and save the world.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so she's determined to step through.
Yeah. That was one of the things that I was trying to figure out what was different about when Lord Asriel did the cut, because when was it Banger? What it was the name of the where the gobblers? Bolvanger, yeah. They didn't always die right away, right? Because we found the one kid who was missing his Rata survive a while afterwards, but it seemed like Roger was almost instantaneous, right?
Well, so I think there's a difference between when he did it, he was just focusing on the release of energy from when the demon is cut from the human, where Bolvanger, they were trying to separate them with the minimal amount of trauma and to have them continue to grow without collecting the dust through their demon. So it was
You think
different
he was
motivations.
trying to just get the maximum energy output
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
cut instead of really okay. Because that was something I was trying to like piece together. Because as I was going back, granted I knew what was going to happen, but listening to it again, it's like all these other kids made it, yet Roger didn't, and I know it makes for a more traumatic story. Our best friend doesn't make it, but yeah.
Well, that, and it lines up with the whole Master saying that she will be the betrayer, or she will have the betrayal at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then, with the witch's prophecy about you're the prophesied child, but I can't tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like it all worked out and lined up.
Very true. Any favorite parts from the book that jump out?
I always like the part where she meets Lee Scoresby, and she meets Yorick Bjornsson, and they have to go get his armor, and they have to go figure out where it is and get that and fight that out.
Yeah, that is a fun one, and I think I got that far in the HBO show. I liked how they did that. Yeah.
I think the part where they're at that. I'm just trying to make sure I'm just talking about the first book here. So it's where they're in that facility in the Arctic area, aren't they, with all the children?
Mm-hmm.
Just
that's
checking.
one.
That's okay. So yeah, that bit, I think that was just really good. It was like a real sense of danger and stuff was going on, and then Mrs. Coulter comes in and like Lyra's hiding. So yeah, I think that was just a really cool sort of dangerous scene, and Lyra's trying to deal with it, and everyone's getting cut from the demons, and I think that was just a cool bit. And unlike what Karen said, the bit with Lorik and his armor and stuff, that was really cool. He was drunk and stuff.
There was a moment there where I felt like as a reader you could really believe that Lyra might get cut herself when she got discovered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
She almost did, didn't she?
She got really close,
Under
and
the
like
knife.
it makes you wonder, like, oh my goodness, like how would this story changed if her mom was that much slower coming to see what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or more
Her mom-
evil.
Yeah.
True.
Her mom didn't have any problems doing it to other kids, but didn't want her kid to have that happen. Now, did she?
Well, and that was
So-
a good conversation after the fact where she's trying to tell her how good it is, and she's like, oh yeah, really? If it's so good, why didn't you let it happen? Why didn't you want it for me?
Yeah,
Don't you want the
right.
best?
Right. Call her out on it.
So, I guess my favorite little part, I really enjoy Karen's as well when we meet Balloon and Bear, Armored Bear. I'm sorry. That's a good one. But as well as when she has a conversation with her father about the Bible verses and how it's the Adam and Eve story, and how you come from dust, so you'll go back to dust. Like that really, I guess, solidified it all for me.
Yeah. I enjoyed the fight scene there as they were escaping. As like you had, the kids were really worried about getting captured there, and they decided to like throw the snow at the soldiers. And you have Lorik the Armored Bear come in with the witches and everything, and like so often happens, like we have that emotional roller coaster of like, are they going to get away, are they not going to get away? oh, they got away, and then what happens to our main character? She gets, you know, swooped back up by her mom again. Is like, oh no, all the children are saved, but they're not. Um,
A lot of turmoil.
yeah, pulling at your heartstrings there. Um, the journey with the gypsies is also kind of fun. I think they're kind of like an interesting little faction in all this. Um,
Yeah,
but
they don't have a huge part to play, the Egyptians, do they? I think they play. I think they play a bigger part in the TV show. I think because they're brought
okay.
to life a bit more.
Hmm.
But I think I don't think they played a massive part in the books. I mean, I read it back in September, but I just didn't think
They got
and
her
I've seen this.
there,
Yeah, they
but
got her to, but that was, and then there's bits where they come in, they're involved. I think throughout, but like, there's not. I don't think they play a huge part. I mean, well, I suppose they do the rescue and stuff. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, the rescue and bits, and they and but yeah, I don't know. I think I just thought they could have been something more. I just think they weren't utilized a lot, other than the first bits.
I see where you're coming from. Like when I went back and reread it, they really set up the Egyptians to take a bigger role at the beginning, to go and save the kids, and as far as like the overarching story goes. But after that point, their story is kind of done in a way. Though it's been a minute since I've reread The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass, but yeah,
I felt like it was just like the, well, not necessarily alternate races, but the difference because the Gypsians were there for their traveling, and they had a strong, telling her origin story of how her parents didn't die, and
hmm
how her father ended up killing her mom's husband, and the bond between uh, Armored Bear and the dad because they did similar things. Yeah, I guess it
mm,
wasn't major, but I really enjoyed the Egyptian speech where they're talking about going and saving the kids. And I felt like they brought up a lot of good counterpoints, and the king laid it out. He's like, so you're going to leave all these other children and tell some of them they can go? Like, come
right,
on, you're better than that.
right. Um, yeah. Were there parts that you wish that they explored more? Like, I wish we got to see more of the armored bears, just because why not? We got to see a little bit after Lyra falls from the balloon, and she kind of tricks the current king of the bear. But aside from that, we really don't get to see a whole lot. And
It wasn't really the focus, because the focus of the book was after you hit puberty and your demon stops transforming, you now have original sin, and yeah, where the armored bears are cool, and we totally have an in for when we meet him again, like we're in tight with the king. um, and it was a good, like I said, for how the uh, bear king killed the other bear, and then how her father killed her mother's husband, and all that, like a couple
yeah,
causal connections.
yeah.
I thought they did a
I
good
think
job in the book. I liked the fight scene between the bears. I thought they could have done a lot more with that in the series. I thought that part was too short. I was wanting more when I watched the HBO series. It was like, okay, that was a pretty short fight. Come on, we could have made that more exciting and
Right,
made it longer.
right. Um, what were you about to say, Ben?
I was just gonna say, I think it's really hard to give the bears any sort of significant sort of stuff. I don't. It's hard because they're such good fighters, and they've got this armor that's almost impenetrable, and it's like bulletproof. And I just don't know what they could do with them. They hunt, they eat, they protect their kingdom, and that's really it. They don't have any need for demons. you know, their armor really is a soul, and that's obviously just like a metaphorical thing. It's not their physical soul or anything. So I really don't know what they could have done with them. And I think maybe, I'm not sure. I try and always think from a writer's point of view, and I try and think why Philip Pullman put Lorik in there and the bears. And I think, did he just write it initially as like, this will be a cool story, let's put this big armored bear in there, and it gives the little girl some sort of horse and some sort of power, you know, some horsepower, like, so to speak. And she's got this sort of weighted, you know, butch kind of muscle behind her. I just think maybe the bit with the king and tricking the king sort of blended in well, but I don't think there's a lot in there for the armored bears to do. I mean, I don't know. Knowing where everything goes, maybe it was all planned out. I don't know. I just don't think there was a lot for them to do. Maybe he could write a prequel, and it could just be on the bears, and it'd be like a novella, like 150 pages maybe. But I don't know if you get a full-blown story out of it. So I just don't know what there is. They're just solitary animals. There's just all bears there. So I don't really know what they could do, you know?
Yeah. I know they have the 3 main stories, but Karen, were you saying you've read others that kind of like take place in the same timeline world, or just other from Philip?
Yes, there's one. He did a novella that looks ahead before this happened, before the first book, and is just talking about how Lee Scoresby met Yorick Bernson, you know, and how they became friends. That's a real good book, short little book that you can listen to on audio. There's another series that he's written since this one. One of them, it's called, I think, La Belle Sauvage, and it looks at the really Lyra and how she ends up as a baby getting to Jordan College in Oxford, and the story of how that happened.
Okay.
And then there was another book that he just published last year that looks at Lyra 7 years after she's come back from the 3rd book, and she's back in her world, and what the impact of that is and how she's doing. She's now like 20 years old and in college. So it's really, really interesting.
I'm going to have to add those to my read list, because I've listened to the trilogy several times over, and we're doing our best not to get into spoilers, so I won't go down that rabbit hole. But yes.
Are they good, Karen? Because I didn't. For me, the first book was the best one. The second one was then the next best one. The third one was like, it just started going downhill for me. It went like 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. Is it worth reading those next books, or
but you look at them as they're different things. So I think you just look at it as what happened? How did Lyra get there? And just follow that story, and you do it as a separate story. You don't have to connect it in, and it doesn't.
Okay.
But you do find out how they developed a couple of the characters that you meet in the first book. You really see, oh, well, they actually had played this part way early in Lyra's, you know, history. So you get some connections there, which is sort of fun. And then the other one, I wasn't as, it was still good. I wanted to know what happened after Lyra got back out of her journey, but they made that one the first of a 2-part series, so it's sort of like you're left hanging at the end of it. You know how that is. So, and I don't know when he's planning on writing that book, so the 3rd book on that series. But it's worth a read or a listen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Going for memory, I put the second one as my favorite of the trilogy. Then first one, then third. But yeah, we'll see if that changes when I go back through them.
I guess I like the third one best, and then probably the first and the second. So.
Wow, three different breakdowns, and we can't ask Pete because he's only recently reread. So
just the first one. They need a book of World of Kern and its downfall. I'm drawing a blank on World of Kern. How do you pronounce that?
The World of Charn. I'm not sure of the World of Charn, if that's obviously one of the worlds, but I'm not sure which one that is without chucking spoilers out to guess which one it is from the 3 books.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't want to guess. I don't know if I don't know if it's got anything to do with elephants at all. Armageddon's engineer, if it's that world maybe that you're talking about, I don't know. So
yeah,
don't want to say too much.
Everything's better with elephants. Yeah, Yeah. I was about to say there's some deeper conversations I really want to get into later on. Um, one of the big kind of like WTF moments I had was like leading up, like the revelations about like who Lyra's parents were, and then how much they seemed to hate each other, and then at the end have that like loving embrace at the end where they're like, okay, we've been working against each other all this time. Now let's cross over into the other world and conquer it together, sort of a deal.
Man, for
Um,
a second there, I totally thought they were on the same side. I thought they were like, aha, I kept him busy. And it's like, yes, and I had time for my research. And then sail off into the sunset.
yeah,
But no, it didn't work.
yeah. Um, always hard to see what the author's thinking. Did you guys have any like big WTF moments or things that just kind of caught you guys off guard when you were reading it, Karen or Ben?
I don't know if I did. I don't think. I don't think in the first book there's anything that I was like really shocked about. I'm just trying to think now. I think.
Yeah,
I think maybe just with Roger at the end. I think that probably shocked me when I read it. I think the fact that
so
he like.
sad.
Yeah, I think the fact he killed Rogers and like just opened the portal and disappeared. It was like, see you later. I was like, that was a bit shocking. I think because they'd always survived and stuff, and it was her friend and Lyra. And she went in, and he was like, no, I don't want you here because I'm gonna be tempted to like kill you. I didn't want you. And then Roger walks in, he's like, oh, Roger, have a seat. Let me get you a drink. Get comfortable before I kill you. So maybe that was a bit shocking because it just showed the lengths that Lord Asriel would go to get what he wanted. He didn't care about killing someone like a child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we haven't talked much about Lyra's ability to read the alethiometer, and just what does that alethiometer part play in this whole thing too? Because Mrs. Coulter is always after it. She's trying to get this. She thinks she's got it. Why does she need it? Because she can't read it. She's got somebody else in the magisterium who can read it. Why does she need this? I hadn't figured that one out.
Yeah.
So, and that's another like big difference between the book, the movie, and the series. The book, they quote, there have only been 6 made. And in the book, the master is laying out the whole plan about how Lyra is going to be the one to betray people, and how character B, who's talking to him, and is pretty much like, how do you know that? And he's like, oh, it's the alethiometer. And for me, I was like, okay, that means we got 2, because the master has one and then Lyra has one, or the master was using it that her father left and then gave it to her.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that was kind of weird for me, so it could have just been developmental and like got to that point, because at the beginning she's seeing the symbols and kind of getting a feel or an interpretation of it, but then while she's with the king bear that we kill, she's getting like a direct conversation with it, and so it's no longer like a feeling or in how you can interpret the different pictures. It's like an actual conversation going on.
Yeah, her ability with it evolved really, really quickly for something that people supposedly take like years and years to learn how to utilize,
Well,
right?
and another thing that didn't add up for me is when she talks to her father about it. He says dust is what makes you able to utilize it, but this whole story we've been told dust doesn't stick to children because they don't have the original sin to utilize the dust. So is it the difference between it going through it and it being attracted to it? Like, is
Bum
this
bum bum.
hammer time, can't touch this? Or is this, like, that didn't quite add up for me.
Yeah.
I think you learn more in the additional books coming up about the alethiometer and its connection with dust. So we can't really talk about that right now.
Okay, that's fine. Oh,
I think I like to think of Lyra having like a lot of midi-chlorians, like the Jedi do, and
There you
this is
go.
how she can read the alethiometer because she's got the force power to be able to do that. That's the way I think of it. And there's a theme of she's got the innocence, that goes with it as of a child that she can just intuitively know it, whereas the adults put too much thought and think to it. They have to, well, it could mean this and it could mean this, and they don't even do the intuitive things. So I think that's where
Yes.
I see her
okay.
reading it.
So she's Goku with the flying Nimbus. You have to be pure of heart to ride the flying Nimbus.
Sure. We can roll with that.
I didn't get my DBZ quote in yet.
I was about to say,
so-
you almost always have to get your DBZ reference in about every episode. But yeah. It's a classic. Definitely one of my favorite fantasy books. Going to have to get on somebody's HBO to watch season 2. How far are we in the series so far? What episode are we on, Ben?
Like, just the first one launched.
You guys on the first? You mean in terms of season 2?
Season 2. We just got first episode out.
Third or fourth now.
Third or
I'm
fourth.
sure it is.
So
I'm
they
trying to
might
think what's
be
happened.
coming
Yeah, I think
lower
tonight's
to
the third or the
HBO.
fourth.
Gosh, if we didn't have COVID, I might be leaning on you, Ben, to travel over there to get some premium
Yeah, come on.
dark
You can get it in a
materials
hotel. Just
access.
come over and just stay in a hotel. It'll be on every Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you can't get it over there. Just like on BBC, you can't just go to the BBC website. Surely, if you just get a VPN and change it to the UK and go to the BBC website and download the iPlayer, you'll be able to watch it for free. The VPN won't cost much. You just change your router details. I used to do it to get American Netflix because you guys had the better stuff before we got Netflix over here. So you just change it, you
makes
Google it,
sense.
and you just change on your router to the UK, watch it, and then change it back to American numbers. Yeah, it won't cost you a penny. You can Google it. It won't take. I don't think it's hard.
All right,
I'm not very
Pete.
technical.
Okay, when you figure it out, you let me know, and I'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pete. We got our next geek tech tip video, courtesy of Ben.
Yeah, that's
we
kind
call
of
them
the
routers,
grade.
but routers.
I
Get it set up.
Same.
Yes.
Same thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like it.
There was a lot of controversy with that for a couple years ago with the whole Hearthstone tournament.
Oh.
Anyway, side note.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. All right. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I'll put this in. It just says this is like less than $2 a month to get a UK VPN.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
cheaper
copy and
than
paste that. So you could just watch it.
HBO. But yeah, MVP of the book. If we had to pick one to help Lyra on her journey, there's so many people that help her get where she needs to go.
Well,
right.
So sidestep real quick. I enjoyed having the full cast for the audio, but at the same time, I was a little disappointed. Like, it was great because every new interaction felt original, felt like it was a different person, but then their screen time wasn't worth jack. So they were just kind of like in there, out there, in there, out there. So, yeah.
Was that its 2-speed or 3-speed, Peter? Or did you actually listen to it
I've
at
listened to
regular
it
speed?
multiple times. To get through it the first time, I did 2x, which, still the voices were unique. And then I did go through it at a 1x speed to see and to truly appreciate the voices.
Slow.
And the only benefit or the only thing that didn't hurt my brain was the music. because the music is a lot better at 1x, but as far as like the voices in my head, the 2x was fine.
That definitely does kind of like take you out of it and realize that you're listening to it at a different speed when you get the sounders or the music playing at some obnoxious speed. All of a sudden, it takes you out like, wait, what? Um, but the rest of it, the brain just filters it. Um, yeah, they're just a little bit more high pitch. But yeah, MVP, Pete, since you took us on the side tangent, who's the MVP that helped our main character?
So it really depends on what you're looking at, because like I felt her father for like progression and for foundation was a big thing, because when he first comes to the college and literally lays out the whole story plot where he's like, hey, I was in the north, check out the northern lights, this is what dust is, and then he tells her about, oh, well, actually, it's when Adam and Eve, ate the apple and were banished, and that's where original sin came from, and that's what dust is, and I'm gonna go kill it. And meanwhile, I've killed your best friend, so now I'm
Uh,
the, Team Rocket evil villain. But at the same time, I've connected you to another universe to give you all these experiences, and I'm really just trying to set you up for the real world. Um, so I felt
Come
like
on,
the
you can get a
father.
couple more references in there. Go.
I felt like the father was the best for overall book development. Um,
Okay.
and there was just like a lot of big key points there. But if I had to go with like who was the most exciting to see in a fantasy environment, would have to be Yurik, the armored bear.
Yeah.
Like his just sense of honor and you know what all happened to him, and the part about like you can't fool a bear because we see straight through it, but then the sidestep for the witch. Oh man, she's got some like Mary Poppins name. Anyway,
Serafina Pekkala.
yeah, she has the whole conversation like, oh well, while a bear is acting as a bear, they can't be tricked, but when a bear acts like a human, then they can.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So I'd have to go with the dad was probably MVP for creating the most stuff.
Fair enough. Who'd you think MVP was, Karen?
One of my favorite characters who I thought we really couldn't have done without was Pantalaimon, Pan, Lyra's demon. He really did a lot of counterpoint to Lyra's impulsiveness and the,
Yes.
oh, I'm just going to go out and do this. And Pam was always the cautious one who was rethinking things, who was sort of like her conscience and going like, well, maybe we should do this. And sometimes he was right and sometimes he wasn't, but that really, the relationship between those two, really, you couldn't have the movie or the book without those. So I think Pan is a really important character.
Yeah. What'd you think, Ben?
Um, MVP's most valuable player, most valuable person. I think it's got to be Lee Scoresby, the aeronaut. He
Yeah.
took, like helped Lyra and got her where she needed to go and rescued her and did loads. He's just like such a selfless kind of person. I think he's just a cool character, and especially in the show, played by Lin-Manuel Miranda, just brings him to life. So, yeah, I'd probably go him. Pretty like a good character. My favorite would be Mrs. Coulter. I think she's just unnecessary evil, but I think most valuable to Lyra's cause and to progress in the story would be him, because otherwise, how is she going to get anywhere without his balloon?
Yeah. Very, very true.
Yeah.
I'll go just to keep with keeping different, because there really was a lot of MVPs, and as always, people leave your MVP in the comments below if you're watching this after the fact. I'm going with Serafina Pekkala, because she really helped bring a lot of the different players together and make it happen as well. And without the witches and the war, it would have been hard to get the children saved and hard to get the balloon going in the right direction, and kind of nudging the different people to where they needed to be. So yeah. And as always, Roger, thank you for your sacrifice. We would have not gotten to the world in the sky without you.
But wait, what about Parallel Roger? We've had this heartstring pulled, and Roger just died to open this portal into another parallel universe where we're gonna go kill the dust, and there he is, Parallel Roger.
Find out more in the next book. Yeah. Do we miss anything, guys, or time to wrap it up?
So I don't know if this is a here and now thing, but a lot of people didn't care for the series due to the religious point of view or the religious side of things. And I don't know. Are we talking about that? We're not talking about that.
I'm all right to talk about it. I'd be curious to see it got some backlash when it initially came out. I know it came out, almost like 30 years ago at this point, but it kind of like, I guess it does directly address it in the first book, but then like in later books, I think it gets a little bit more direct. Yeah. Thoughts?
So, go ahead.
No, you go, Pete. You brought it up. You go first.
All right. So the only real big connection for me was when the father was talking to Lyra about how Adam and Eve created original sin, and then it all kind of, comes together, and I feel like is more so on the side of the religious side when Pan at the very end, when Lyra's about to cross over to the other world, where Pan pretty much says, like, we believed them, all these adults that are severing kids and think that dust is bad, being the antagonist and all that. But in reality, what if it's good? So now we've got the innocence of youth, and we've got to go and save the world. So I thought it was more like it talks about it, it uses it as a literary device, but I didn't think it was in opposition. It wasn't like the opposite or really skewing the story of Adam and Eve.
It does kind of put the church though in a negative light, right? Because they're kind of set up as the villains.
Killed Jesus. And I mean, due to Adam and Eve and having original sin, that's the whole reason God sent down Jesus, his only son, to, blaspheme and to forgive us for our sin. Like, unless I completely misunderstood it, I thought, for the religious point of view, yes, you have it, but that's the whole, like, confessions and asking for forgiveness and, why God sent his only son.
I think the books were written, I think, in contrast to the, what's it called? The Narnia stories, the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. Those were very religious, like pro-Christian books, apparently. I haven't read them. There's like 7 or 8 of them, whereas people just think there's like 2 or 3. But this was, for me, knowing the whole where it all heads to. This first book is definitely an anti-church message. I mean, the evil people of the church, and they're called the Magisterium, and he's very much focused on them being bad. I mean, I think in the first book it's not as obvious as it is later. Not spoilers, but just it really does focus on it. Like, I don't go to church. I'm very much Christian and believe in the Ten Commandments and God and angels and guardian angels and stuff. I'm very much 100%. I don't go to church because a lot of like old women singing, and I don't really sing, so I don't go to church very much in England. And I feel like in England, Christianity is still there, but it's not as prominent as it will be in America. And Laura and I sort of think that's really good for Americans, because we sort of miss that. I suppose we'd like to go to church like on a Sunday with our kids in the future when we have kids and stuff and do that kind of stuff. But over here, religion's really diluted in England. It's not a massive part, especially not Christianity, unfortunately. And I just think with his Dark Materials, it's definitely an attack on it, and it's probably from Philip Pullman's own personal perspective. Maybe he had a bad experience with it. I know he's like 60 now, 56, 60. Maybe he was at a boarding school run by like monks or nuns or something. He had a bad experience. I don't know what's happened, but he's obviously got some kind of dislike of it, because there's a strong focus on it being that like they're the bad guys. And I think it's definitely probably affected sales amongst certain people. And I'd even say it's probably been banned in some schools when it first came out, because it's pretty quite controversial.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's it doesn't detract from, for me, it didn't detract from reading the books that it had that message to it, because it's still a really good story. And it's interesting to see other story points. And obviously, as a Christian, you shouldn't judge. So it'd be controversial and contradictory of me to be like, I don't want to read it, it's rubbish, I don't like his viewpoint, because that's judging when I shouldn't be judging. But I think for me, when I said earlier the book sort of went downhill, it was just by the end of it, it was ironically more of a sermon than a story of him giving his own viewpoint rather than a story. So that's why I didn't like it. But I think in the first one, it's not too bad. But I would definitely say that there is no way I think that it isn't an anti-church driven story, I would say.
Well,
Okay.
it is named His Dark Materials, so the whole like other side of your soul is a demon, and it's dark.
Yeah. I think good to hear Ben's perspective on that, but like one of the things you really hit on that I appreciate is when reading to kind of like separate some of that stuff, right? Because like it is a fantasy story, and whatever the author's viewpoints are, it's kind of good to kind of like put it in perspective and read it from, you know, that stance of a story. And even if you don't agree with whatever their agenda is per se, you can still enjoy the journey. But yeah,
appreciate the imagination.
Yeah. And it's been a while since I've reread the second and third one, but now I'm going to kind of like apply that filter as I read it. Yeah.
I think there's a lot more of the science versus religion kind of point of view in here too.
Yeah.
You've got that, and so there's sort of, and I know that Philip Pullman is an atheist. He claims to be an atheist, so I think he just doesn't like organized religion, not necessarily spirituality or the components, but I think it was more of an attack on organized religion. And it doesn't have to be just Christianity. It happened to be in this focus, but I think it could apply to other religions as well. So, and as Ben said, it does get more intense about the anti-religion, I think, in the future books. So
yeah,
I think that's why they, as a group, probably were banned, and maybe not the first one as much as the other ones would be. But I think it's the attack on the organized religion that really is the issue around that.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I keep wanting to jump into the next couple books to talk about, but just the Golden Compass or the Northern Lights for this stream. And then lost my last question. What else you got, Pete?
So I kind of had like a weird deja vu-ish moment when the father ends up going over to the other world. It made me think of Full Metal Alchemist.
Okay.
Because our main character's father ends up going into another world.
Yeah.
Of a parallel world.
All the stories borrow from each other, right?
Yeah. It was just...
But yeah, I remember you telling me about that before the stream, and I definitely see some similarities there. And Full Metal Alchemist is an amazing anime, manga. But yeah, yeah.
I think one of the things I liked about the Lyra's world was the fact that it wasn't exactly like ours. It was like a different world, you know, where electricity wasn't called that. It was called, what is it, anabaric, and they didn't have planes. They had gyrocopters and things like that. And
Zeppelins.
right, you could feel it was a different world,
So it's still
but
similar.
right, but similar enough that we could relate to it. So I think when they go through to different worlds, then we're going to be able to see in the next books, you know, more of a difference.
Yeah.
I think Lyra's world was very believable because Oxford, where it's set, and they filmed it in Oxford. I was in Oxford about 8 weeks ago, and it's literally the architecture you can see in the show and stuff in the first season. That's literally what Oxford is like. It's very, very like pretty, and it's very cool architecture everywhere. So I think that brings this alive as well because they filmed it in the location it's based in.
Neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Places to add to the travel list after COVID. Yeah. Anything else? I know it's getting late over there for Ben. Final thoughts. 3 out of the 4 of us have continued on with the series. Pete, you want to keep on reading, see what happens?
Yeah, I'm curious. So normally I give the book a feel of, was the ending satisfying? And on one hand, parents didn't get back together. You just killed my best friend, and the armored bear isn't coming along. But on the other hand, new parallel universe, so there's a lot of potential. And then I believe the dad pretty much said that the bridge is always going to be open, because conversation between the dad and the mom was like, oh, they're going to barricade it, they're going to stop it, they're not going to allow it. And he's like, ah, ha, 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 evil villain monologue. I'm, past them being able to tell me what to do. They're not going to be able to stop it. So I'm curious for the progression, and so I'll be continuing it.
Right on. Final thoughts on book 1, Ben and/or Karen?
I'd go ahead and read the next one. I mean, that's what it makes you want to read the next one. So.
Yeah,
really good book. The first one's, they're all really good. I think the first one's the best one, but everyone's got their own different opinions, which is obviously what's so good about it, or the whole book thing. And I think it really sets it up. This does. I think this really sets up. And the second one is really exciting. It's really good. I think the second one's the real catalyst of the series. So if you read that one, you might as well read the third one as well. So yeah, you should read it. It's one of those series it's well known. It'll go down in history as being like a really good trilogy. So you should you deserve to read it for yourself.
Yeah, definitely considered a classic. So yeah. Next week, I've already finished it. I don't know if Peter's gotten it to it yet, and it's going on Ben's TBR for next year. But if you guys want to get a head start on it before we get around and reading it with Ben, Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, book 4 of the Stormlight Archive. Wow, amazing. Looking forward to going back through it again this week and getting ready for the Geek Out stream. Yeah. Have you started listening to it yet, Pete?
So I started with the stuff Brandon released on YouTube.
Okay.
But then I ADD'd all over the place and
listened to half a dozen different books between now and then.
To half a dozen different books, and it's all good stuff. It's might be trying to get into writing myself. So
journey before destination. Yeah,
writing's good.
It is good.
There are just so many like epic, cool elements that I just want to like pick from the Brandon
Yes.
Sanderson stuff. Like, side note, or speaking of airplanes, as people used to say, um, Syl can shapeshift and is a weapon. So, like, the idea of like evolutionary weapons that also can shift, it breaks down that whole like rock, paper, scissor, lizard, Spock of combat for like Final Fantasy. So I
Yeah.
don't know. That's just like a little nugget that you can create a whole universe out of.
Yeah. Yeah. Ben's a big inspiration for me to keep writing. He's constantly tweeting out his writing update. So yeah, if you haven't
Thank you.
already, go follow Ben. Ben, Karen, thanks for hanging out with us tonight, talking about his Dark Materials. We'll let you guys know when we get ready to do the Subtle Knife and see if we can get you guys on there. And yeah,
Got anything coming up?
Yeah,
Karen?
Ace. Thank you.
yeah,
It's been fun.
been fun.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Yeah.